Hey guys, in this video I'm going to show you how to develop your problem solving skill and become better at programming. So here is the problem. Input list and input num are read from input. Modify num as two parameter list to modify a num and increases each element of list to modify by num. Call modify num with a copy of the list input list and input num as the argument to avoid modifying input list. So this is the result, the solution of the problem. So how can we solve this problem? We need to look at the instruction once again. So the first line says input list and input num are read from input. So we need to translate that first into coding. So input list equal int input, and then input num input num equal int input. So now let's read the second line to understand a little bit. Modify num as two parameters. So we also have a function. How do we know it's a function? Is because of the bracket at the end of modify num. So we're gonna use def modify nums, and you take two parameters, list to modify and num. So list to modify and so now let's read, and the next line says call modify num with a copy of the list input list. So we know that the input list variable will be passed as an argument, right? And it is actually a list. So this means the input list here that we get from the user, it has to be a list. So how can we write that into code? So there is different way to do that, but I think the easy way is to use list comprehension. So we can use int x for x in input that split. So this will return a list of integer, and we separate all the integer with a comma. So that's solved for list input list. And the second argument is input num. So now we need to get a copy of list input list. So also how can we write that? So there's different way to get a copy. First let me pass here. So we can use a variable called mylist, and we can use the list function, and we can pass input list. This will allow us to get a copy of the input list so that when we modify the original one, so that all we have to do is just modify their one, and then we can still conserve the original one. So we have their one as well. So now we need to now write the code in the function. So how can we modify the original list? So the best way to do it is to actually use the enumerate function. So we can look to Hold on, I think I made a mistake here. So we can loop to the list to modify list. We're gonna loop to the indices and to the value. And the best way to do that is to enumerate. So we can go use for I elements in list, in actually enumerate list to modify. So we're gonna so this line allow us to loop to the indices and the element of list to modify. For instance, if the list to modify is that one, we're gonna loop to the first indices is 0 and the value is 38. The second indices is 1, the value is 42. The third indices is 2 and the value is 35. So we loop to the indices as well as the value. So after when we're done doing that, then we can use list to modify I. So list to modify the indices will be equal to the element plus the num. So the list to modify will be the input list. So all we have to do is to add the input num provided by the user and add that to each element into the original list. So for instance, this is the original list, 5. So 5 will be added to 35, to 33, sorry, it's right here. And 9 will be added to 33, 2 will be added to 33, 7 will be added to 33. So now all we have to do now is to print modify modify list 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 modify. So now we can call the function. So we're gonna call modify num, and it's gonna take the copy of the list of the input list, my list. It's gonna take input num. So when we call this function, it's gonna print the modify list just like the instruction, and then we can just print now the original list. And the original list will be input list. And make sure that's the case. Yeah. Actually, this one's supposed to be input now. It's a F here, F string, input now, input list. So let's verify CLS to clean. So we have original list will be 5 separated by space 9, 2, 7, 4, 1, 3, and then 33. So here's the solution. Thanks for watching.